You're listening to Bloom After Baby, the podcast. We're your hosts, Rachel Daggett
and Jen Jordan.
We're a therapist
and a doctor
and both moms of two.
We're here to discuss the mental health and wellness needs that are unique to motherhood.
From confusing hormone swings to your expanding body to boundaries in tricky relationships, we'll give you the information you need to experience motherhood in a way that feels good to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get to it.
Today, I am sitting down with a very, very good friend of mine, whose name also happens to be Rachel Quigley. And in this conversation, we talk about how we met, which is a really cool story that we both just love to share and I think is really valuable for new moms to hear. We speak to the importance of mommy and me groups and postpartum support groups. We talk a little bit, or Rachel shares a bit about her mental health journey in postpartum, and she shares a really, really amazing story about something her husband did for her when she was struggling with her mental health in postpartum and how he really showed up for her and advocated for her. Really awesome story. I can't wait for you guys to hear. And then we just talk a little bit about a predicament that Rachel is currently in, which is whether or not to have a second baby. And she really shares really vulnerably. Rachel was really brave and courageous to share this part of her journey with us, with me and with you guys, our listeners. And she really wanted to do it because Rachel really wants to help other moms who maybe are in that decision-making process of, do I have another? Whether you already have one or two or however many kids, or maybe you're just trying to decide if you should or want to have kids at all with your partner. And she talks you through how she's going about making that decision, some of the conversations she's having with her husband, John, about the decision. And she shares a couple of resources that have been helpful for her in making that decision. One thing I'd really want to highlight that I hope you mamas can take away from this conversation is that it is okay to put your needs first at times when you're a mother, and that it's actually incredibly healthy both for you and your children for you to take into consideration the health of your marriage, the health of your relationship with your partner, and the health of you in your decisions that you make about your family and about growing your family and parenting decisions. Again, I really admire how John and Rachel are going about this. And so I was really excited to share this. And I'm so grateful to you, Rach, for your courage in sharing this with everybody. And also with working at being comfortable in the unknown. That's a really big thing that Jen and I are passionate about as well, is teaching other moms that you aren't always going to have the answer. And we may not always have the answer as well. I certainly don't a lot of times don't have the answers for my clients that I work with in therapy. And a lot of our work is kind of just sitting in that and being okay in the unknown and in the gray area and just getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So can't wait to share this conversation with you. Thank you guys so much for listening. And let us know if you have any questions. And I've got everything in the show notes if you want to reach out to Rachel or check out her new business. And yeah, here we go.
Hey, Rach.
Hey, Rach.
Thank you. Truly, thank you for doing this with me.
For sure.
It's a lot. So for our listeners, I'm sitting here with Rachel number 2 or 1, depending how you look at it. But
number 2.
Rachel is a very, very dear friend and very, very important person in my life and in my journey of motherhood. And so I kind of want to set the stage so that all of you who are listening know what you can gain from this conversation and from this connection that Rachel and I have. And so I want to set the stage a little bit for who Rachel is and how we met and our story a little bit. And so I'm thinking about, well, first I want to say you're one of those friends that you feel like you've known forever. And like maybe in a past life we were connected or something, even though I've only known you for not even 4 years now, because going to start crying. Nora just turned 4. Reed's about to turn 4. And I'm thinking back to like probably the most raw and vulnerable time of my life when I started a Mommy and Me class when Reed was probably like 4 weeks old.
Yeah.
And first time mom, probably one of the very few times I drove with him in a car yet. Yeah. And other than taking him to the pediatrician, I'm remembering just like going up the stairs with his car seat and just shaking, right? Like, what am I doing? I'm so nervous for this group. Why did I do this? And sitting in this circle with women with all their little babies and just feeling so surreal and so out of place, but also felt like I really belonged there at the same time, yet so like uncomfortable in my skin and just so unsure, right? When you're like a first time mom with a newborn.
And like any noise that they make is like, oh my God. Yeah. My child is crying. Everybody's going to think I'm a terrible mom.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember the group leader being like, babies cry. You know, don't apologize when they cry. I remember watching all of us because it gave me reassurance, seeing other people be nervous too. Yeah. But like whenever the baby would start crying, it would be like we had this like reflex to like want to,
like a physical reaction,
soothe them correctly, so we looked like we were doing it right.
We didn't know what the hell we were doing.
No idea. No idea. And I remember specifically too, Reed was really gassy and uncomfortable and colicky at that stage. And so I was so insecure, and I bet every other mom felt the same way. Yeah. But I remember you were like a few people down from me, and I think I maybe came in late, so I heard like the tail end of your story, but I heard that your name was Rachel and that your husband's name was John. And that your baby was born like 3 weeks to the day before Reed. Yeah. And that you had a white fluffy dog. And I was like, wait, what is happening? Is this
it was crazy. What is happening? Crazy.
So for context, my name's Rachel, obviously. My husband is Sean, and I have a white fluffy dog. And yeah, it was just crazy. And obviously the first thing I thought was like, she's so beautiful. And her hair is so lovely.
I'm sure.
No, it's true.
No, I know, but I'm just thinking back to what I looked like at that time in my life.
Yeah. So I just remember that first meeting. And then COVID happened like 2 weeks later. So I think we maybe got to take advantage of like 2 total in-person groups for Mommy and Me. And it continued on virtually, luckily. And our leader did a great job really supporting us because COVID was such a weird time, obviously, and scary for everybody, but having a newborn, it was even more unsettling. But I was in therapy at the time, and I was telling my therapist about you because she was really encouraging me to reach out to other moms. And I was like, well, it's like, I'm good, right? Yeah. I've had many close friends pave the way for me, and I knew I could ask them, but they were in different stages. All their babies at the time, their kids were a little bit older. And she was like, no, there's something really important about having a mom that you can turn to and text in the middle of the night that's in the same stage as you. Yeah. And I was like, well, I really like this Rachel girl. And I feel like we would be friends, and I want to ask her to be my friend, but like, I feel really weird. And now it's all virtual. So anyway, long story short, she encouraged me to reach out to you and ask you on a Zoom date.
I remember it very, very vividly.
Yeah, and we did it.
I thought it was so nice. Oh my gosh, she's so ballsy to do that. Like, that's so cool. I love that, because I obviously was looking for friends too. And I was kind of the opposite of you, where I didn't have as many friends who had kids. I think I had one at the time who had a baby like 3 months prior to me. And so I was like really searching for someone, searching for my Rachel. Yeah. It's funny now because thinking about when I was growing up, I had an imaginary friend named Rachel. And so I would look in the mirror and like talk to this girl named Rachel. And so then I made this friend named Rachel, and my family joked, because it was COVID and nobody could meet each other, that, are you sure you have a friend named Rachel? I'm like, I swear she's real. I promise.
Yeah. And then it took me like a couple years into our friendship to meet your family, because for COVID and then people getting sick or for whatever reason not being able to attend events, but that is so funny to me.
I know. It is pretty good.
So I do exist, Bogies. So just such a beautiful story. And I feel like we like trauma bonded a little.
Totally.
Because we both really struggled postpartum. And I felt like you were somebody I could like be totally brutally honest with. And I could text like, I'm not enjoying this or why did I do this? Or and I remember like we went out to dinner one time, like when the babies were like a little bit older, and we just sat and bitched about how horrible pregnancy was. And I had a lot of friends who loved being pregnant. And so it just felt so normalizing for me to not like just be loving every minute.
Yeah, totally.
So all that to say, you know, Jen and I with Bloom After Baby, something we really want to offer people is ultimately knowing that you're not alone. And if you are in a tough place in pregnancy or postpartum or motherhood in whatever phase, there's nothing wrong with you. And you, Rachel, really helped me come to terms with that, because going into motherhood, I thought, maybe you felt this way too, it's all going to come naturally.
Yes.
It's all just going to fall into place because people told me that. And even providers told me that, right? Oh, he's latching in the hospital, so you're good.
Yeah.
And then when things weren't good, when we got home with nursing, it felt like I was flawed. I was doing something wrong.
Right. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about postpartum and what your experience was like.
Okay. Yeah.
I know you also struggled with depression and anxiety historically. And then maybe I was surprised by how much postpartum made all that so much worse for me. Yeah. I know you struggled too. So will you share a little bit about what your experience was postpartum?
Yeah. So postpartum for me was a crazy, like, smack in the face that I did not expect. I knew everybody told me, and everybody says it, it's going to be so hard. This is the hardest thing you're going to do. And I was like, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. But it's like one of those things that you literally just have never experienced it before. And there's nothing, and I truly feel like you can be prepared, but there's nothing that really fully prepares you. And I just remember being like, not confused, but very, oh my God, this is forever. Like, this isn't going to stop. This is now my responsibility forever. Yeah. And I'm never going to get a break. And I think what the craziest part for me is your safe space, your home, has now become the biggest shift. Yeah. And I didn't feel like I had a safe place anymore, or a place to relax, or a place that I could go and unwind, because the baby was constantly there. And I had had a C-section too. And so I was also in a lot of pain, and I was on pain medication. And I remember just like trying to manage the time. I remember waking up at like 3 a.m. and having to write down what time I needed to take my next pill, what time I should be feeding the baby next, what time the baby had pooped or Nora had, fed or whatever. And I just remember being so overwhelmed by it all. And it was funny because I was even talking to Julie about this, my cousin, and she was like, I just remember you during that period, and you had said to me, I just feel so alone. Like, I just feel like no one, I don't know, like just so alone. But so I had a really, really hard time with it. And there was nothing I couldn't really snap myself out of it. And so when we had gone to one of our checkups, my husband, John had came with me, and we were getting Nora checked, actually. And we had taken her for like a well baby visit. Okay. And the doctor was, baby looked great. Everything's good. The doctor said, how's mom? How are you doing, mom? And I said, I'm fine. And then John said, no, she's not. She's not okay. She's really struggling. And I think we should get her some help. Yeah, I know. And I just remember sobbing, and the doctor like hugged me and was like, this is really hard. It's okay. It's okay. We're going to get you some help. Oh, I know it was. And that was like the moment I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to cry. It was like, oh my God, this is really hard. It's okay for me to say that this is really hard, because I thought I was like the crazy one for thinking that I can't handle this. What did I just do? So I just appreciated John for doing that for me so much, because I don't know that I would have ever said it,
Had you guys talked before the appointment about it?
No, he knew that I was struggling. Like he knew that I was, and I think I had just been like, I would just be crying. I remember collapsing on the stairs one day and just like, falling and crying on the stairs and being like, I hate the way I feel. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And just sobbing. And I think that might've been like right around maybe like the day before or right around that time.
Yeah.
But we hadn't really talked about it because we hadn't ever, I don't know. It's such a blur. It's such a fog.
Yeah, it's what a beautiful thing he did for you.
I know.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I was going to ask you about it too, because you and I have talked a lot about this, and Jen and I are wanting to talk a lot about it with Bloom After Baby too, of the experience of the dad as well, and that they can struggle too with their own postpartum mood or anxiety stuff, but also with how to help us.
Yeah, right.
And Sean has shared with me so many times that he felt really lost at times when he knew I was struggling, because he didn't know what he could do. He couldn't fix it. And so many men are programmed to fix, and for that to be their, what they can offer, bring to the table. And so I know that for a lot of men, and for those moms listening, maybe your partners have felt this way too. It's like, you can feel really helpless when they see you struggling and suffering and being this version of yourself that they've maybe never seen before.
Right.
And not knowing what to do and not knowing how to help. And what John did was so beautiful. I know. And so vulnerable of him to say that too, not knowing how you might react or feel in the moment about it. Yeah. And I don't even think he knew. I think he just knew she's not okay. I'm going to get her help, And he's really good about doing that too, about like reaching out to others for help. And I remember too, he had tried prior to this, like, I think it was like the second week, like Nora was like 2 weeks old, so little. And he scheduled a day out, and we went to Stillwater and we got beers with Julie, Greg, and Nicole, and me and John, and doing stuff like that. He was able to, that was him helping. And, because you wouldn't have done that.
Absolutely not. No.
And you wouldn't have told the pediatrician.
I couldn't even think straight to set up a plan. You know what I mean? I couldn't even plan something.
Right. Yeah.
Let alone.
Yeah. Because your brain can't. I get it. It's so all consuming. It's like that part of your brain is shut off, which is actually sort of scientifically true, which is crazy. But I love that. And I just hope more dads can learn how to like fully lean into that power that they have to help in ways that might not feel super intuitive to them, and might not feel also, there's no immediate gratification there. Right. But he just like advocating, and like you said, because you commented on our post about it, that he found the words when you couldn't find the words or something. So it's just so beautiful. Yeah. I also think it's cool that the pediatrician even asked that.
I know. I was surprised. Kaiser. Yeah.
Good job,
Kaiser. And I'm thankful for our pediatrician too, because she has a daughter who's a year older than Nora. So I felt like we were kind of in this, she understood as a mom with little ones.
Yes.
How challenging it can be. Yeah.
So this is a kind of a tangent, but one other really important thing that has been on my heart and kind of was in my face when I had my second, when I had Blake, is this, like, what is that impulse we have to not be honest with doctors? What, like,
I don't know.
Even when, like, I'm a therapist, like, we're in my office right now. Right. I teach people how to advocate for themselves. Right. And then when I'm in a doctor's office and they give me the PHQ-9 or the 𝐸𝐫𝐬7, which are the standardized surveys for depression and anxiety, I'm like hesitant to be honest.
Right. I know.
What is that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's because, I don't know. I don't want them to think I'm crazy or like.
That's like a whole other thing we need to break down. Yeah. But
that is interesting though, because you're totally right.
Yeah. And I'll tell more about this story in future episodes. And I don't know if I've told you this, but after we had Blake, we were in the hospital still, and they came around and they gave me those assessments for depression and anxiety. And I do want to say how we've progressed, how that they even give those to new moms now, which is incredible. But I had been really depressed during pregnancy, which and so if I was being brutally honest on that, I would have scored really high on the depression survey.
Right.
And I sat there and I like grappled with it. And Sean was sitting in the corner. He was holding Blake and I was filling it out. And the nurse had left it with me with all the other discharge paperwork. And I was so torn up about, I was like, do I be honest on this? And then I was like, no, I have to be honest. Like, this is what I'm doing for a living. I can't be honest. Even when I'm really scared to be, like, how can I expect anyone else to be that's not in this field, right? Uh-huh. And so I was, and the look on the nurse's face when I handed it to her of like just pure, she was terrified.
I thought you were going to say that she was like, oh, honey, we're going to take care of you.
No. And bless her heart, I don't blame her. It's a systemic problem. But she obviously hadn't been trained in like,
what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What to do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so she was like fumbling with the papers and like, okay, well, since you scored this on this, I'm going to have to call your OB and we're going to have to get her in here before you can leave. And she was like, poor thing. I was like, so when she left, I turned to Sean. I was like, oh my gosh, I just terrified her. And I was like, why did I do that? And he was jokingly like, they're not going to let us go home with her now. Like, you're going to end up in the psych ward. And it was like funny, but also I was nervous.
Yeah.
I genuinely was like, are they going to come in here with
a straitjacket?
Yes. Thank you. Anyway, so that didn't happen. And they ended up sending in a social worker, which I was grateful for because we had this great conversation. And I'm so glad that resource is there in the hospital. Yeah. But it was just an interesting experience. And
totally.
There's so much more to talk about there. Anyway, I'm so grateful that John advocated for you.
I know. Same.
So one other thing I want to say about our friendship that I think is so valuable for moms to know in terms of when you're looking for mom friends or friends in general is that not only have I never felt judged by you.
Yeah.
But I've never felt that you judged my child.
Never.
And that's harder to come by than you might think, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because kids are crazy.
Right. They are.
Reed has hit Nora on the back with a toy vacuum before and shoved her down at Los Molinos. And he's done many things that make me, and this is my own issue, this is not about him, it's about me. When I go into shame spiral of what is wrong with my child, nothing is wrong with him. But you've never been reactive about that. You've never been judgmental about that. And I've always felt that I could come to you with anything I was going through as a mom in the transition and knew I could be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And I could tell you anything that was happening with Reed, and I knew you would still love my kid too.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is so, so important.
I mean, you were there for me when I had to take Nora out of daycare.
Yeah.
John and I are so grateful for you and Sean for opening up your house and letting our child even go there for 2 days a week. And she got to play with a buddy. Yeah, he hit her, whatever. No big deal. Kids hit.
Yeah, they do.
I remember they were running around and they just smacked right into each other.
Yeah. So PSA for those of you who still have infants, kids hit and bite and do all sorts of things that you thought your kid would never do. And nothing's wrong with your kid and nothing's wrong with you.
Yeah. And like, even if you struggle with Reed being physical, whereas I struggle with Nora being verbal. And saying really hurtful verbal things. And it makes me want to just crawl in a hole. And again, that's like my own issue.
Yeah.
Because I know that she's just
right
finding her place and trying to figure out, she knows exactly who she is. But.
Yeah. And I know Dr. Becky has helped us both.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Love Dr. Becky. Okay. So last main topic I want to touch on is where you are currently in your motherhood journey.
Yeah.
And I know as Nora and Reed were growing and embarking in the toddler stage, and we were both navigating the struggles of that, we both were honest with each other about, I don't know if I want another one.
Yeah.
For a long time, we both were kind of grappling with that. And Sean and I ended up deciding we did. And as you know, I still questioned it until she came. But we made that decision earlier. And I know you are still making that decision and figuring out what's best for your family. And I think the way you and John are navigating it and talking about it, and the way you're seeking guidance about it, it's so easy to get stuck in like asking for advice from like a million different people. Like, what should I do?
Right.
I feel like you have done such a good job of seeking other people's personal experiences and guidance, but you and John are still making the decision together as a team. And what I love so much is that you're taking into account your own needs as a mother, a wife, a friend, a daughter, a professional, and a human being in that decision. And I feel like you're such a good role model for being a mother who is wholeheartedly committed to loving her child and being an incredible mom, and also knowing that you are also so much more than that, and that doesn't define you. Yeah. So will you share a little bit about where you are with that and how you're making that decision?
Yeah, definitely. So originally it's crazy because when I first had the idea of starting a family, I always thought I would have 2 or 3 kids. But before John and I got engaged, when we were still dating, I had said that I wanted kids, and John said he wasn't sure. He didn't say no, but he said he wasn't sure. And I said, I 100% want children. Yeah. And if you're not sure, then maybe we shouldn't do this. Yeah. And we didn't talk for 3 days. We really had to decide if this was what it was. Ultimately, he said, I'll be open to it. Okay. So I was like, good enough for me. I can change him. Yeah. No problem. That's easy.
And this was pre-engaged?
This was pre-engagement. Okay. So this is probably we have been together. John and I have been together too for 12 years. And we've been, so we were probably dating for 5 years at this point. So for a while. So then after we got married, and when we did get married, we had, within a year, we had gotten engaged, gotten married, bought a car, bought a house, moved cities, had a baby. So it was wild, right? And that probably is a lot to do too with my postpartum anxiety and depression. The fact that I didn't even know where to drive. If I tried to get myself out of the house for the day, I wouldn't even know where to go. Yeah.
You literally moved into your house,
when I was 3 weeks before I gave birth. Yeah. 30 miles south of where I was living. So anyway, then fast forward. So we had a baby, then fast forward a year and a half later, at the time you're supposed to start talking about having your second, right? Supposed to, right? And I'm like, all right, John, let's do it. And he's like, what are you talking about? We are barely holding it together with one. How? And I had never even thought that you could have one, just one. And so for me, it was really, really difficult, where I was my world spiraled, because I had originally been I'm having 2 kids. That's what I've been told. I've told myself that. Right. And so it was really difficult for me at first. And I feel like I grieved for a while, and I really struggled with it, but it never was totally off the table. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it was always I don't know, not yet, but let's talk about it again. Not yet, but let's talk about it again. I feel like we've just talked about it on and off so much. So it took me a long time to come to the fact that we might not have 2 kids. And I was in this stance that my marriage and my family are so important to me. And I never want to be in a position where I am forcing John to have a baby. Yeah. It just wouldn't work, especially after having a child. And it has to be something that we both really want. So anyway, now, as of this past January, we were quote unquote scheduled to have a conversation about it. And I was 6 days late on my period. And I was like, oh shit, I think I might be pregnant. Oh no, this isn't, what are we going to do? And so then obviously I told him, hey, I'm late. I'm going to take a pregnancy test. And then when I took the pregnancy test, it was negative. And I was sad, but I was more sad that the decision hadn't been made for us. Yeah. Yeah. It would have taken that out of our hands. Right. Yeah. And so then after that, he was like, well, if you're sad, I guess that gives us our answer, and whatever you want, I just want to make you happy. And then after that, I was like, well, you know what? I actually don't know if I want another baby at this point. I have done so much soul searching in the past 2 years of my life, just like really thinking about who I am, who I want to be, who I want to become outside of being the mom. And I feel like the last 10 years of my life, I've had it basically laid out for me, where I was going to get engaged, get married, move into the cliche timeline, whether or not I want to admit that. Like, I was living my life for that.
Yeah.
And I really had to ask myself, do I want another baby because that's what I'm supposed to be doing? Or do I want another baby? Why do I want another baby? Yeah. And so I've really been on this like journey trying to figure that out. So anyway, now essentially the ball is in my court. And I don't know if I do want another baby. And because I've really learned to like, I'm having a hard time with this.
It's okay. Okay. So I know that you've shared some of this with me as you've gone through the process.
Yeah.
And what I've really respected is that you and John haven't been afraid to get help with this.
Yeah.
You went to couples therapy.
Yes.
And I know at one point you guys were going through a hard time in your marriage. And do you feel like this looming decision was part of that?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Okay. And so then how did couples therapy help?
Well, she opened up our eyes to saying, like, even if you have a baby, like even if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, the most important thing for you guys is your marriage. So you need to make sure that your marriage is rock solid at all times. And for us, the thought of bringing another baby in at this point is like not...
It wouldn't be at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good time.
It wasn't a good time. No. And so that actually helped us because we were like, okay, like we are dealing with some stuff and we don't need to be adding more stress. And then I talked to another therapist and she provided me with like actual physical answers to realistic questions to ask yourself about adding another baby. And all of this really helped with my decision too, because it was like, is your family going to be able to handle the added stress? Are you financially secure for this? Will you need another car? It asked like actual,
tangible questions. Yeah. That made it more measurable.
Yes, exactly. And I think that like you could, in a fantasy world, you could say like, yes, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. Yep. It's all good. But like, this is the only thing that we as a society talk about in like a fantasy world, when it should be like the most realistic conversation that you have. Like, yes, you will figure it out because you don't have another choice.
Yeah.
Once the baby comes, I don't know, you do have a choice of how your family is going to.
And you will figure it out because you don't have a choice when the baby is there, the child is there. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a good situation.
Right.
Doesn't mean everything's going to be provided for. Right. It doesn't. And it's hard to even be honest about that. To say that. Because
and it has been.
I'm sure. And I know, like before I got pregnant, I joined a Facebook group that was like one and done because I was in that train for a long time. And it feels so taboo. And I know, I do want to say, I know one of your fears in talking about this openly is that you're going to come off that you don't love being a mom.
Yeah, right.
And then you don't love your daughter. So I know, and people who are listening know, and your family and she and John, there's no question that you would give your life for her. Right. That you are an amazing mom and that you love being a mom. You do. Yeah. I know you do. So just because you aren't sure if you want to have another, like, to me, that's like, you're being really responsible in this decision. And also, something that's coming up for me is that I feel like in previous generations, there was this given narrative of, it will just work out. Right. Yeah. Right? Like when you get married to have a family and then your kids are everything to you. And especially for moms, it's you sacrifice everything for your children. And that's what being a mom is. And there are consequences to that. There have been. Right. I think a lot of marriages were lost because of that narrative. And I'm just grateful that, I don't know, I'm grateful that we're given this even opportunity to make a different choice for ourselves and our marriages and to put our marriages first. I remember Sean and I, when we did premarital counseling, that was something we we're taught that no matter what happens, your relationship has to be first.
Yeah.
No matter if you have 1 kid or 10 or none, your marriage has to come before your careers.
Mm-hmm.
Like not every day, not every minute of the day.
Yeah.
But I wasn't taught that growing up.
No.
At all.
No.
It was like,
I don't know if anyone was,
And
especially
so-
if you have any sort of religious background.
Totally.
Mhm.
Yes. I think that is a lot where it comes from. And Sean and I put those words in our
Mhm.
vows that we wrote because we were like so inspired by it, and we still are. And it's so true. But anyways, I really admire you for putting that first and for not being afraid to talk about this, because I know it's hard.
Yeah.
And I know you want to help. Part of why you wanted to talk, and we're open to talking about this because I asked you.
Yeah. Because you forced me to come on here.
Because you really do want to reach other moms, and you want to
Yeah.
help other moms who may be either trying to decide if they want to have another or just feeling lost in motherhood and who am I anymore?
Yeah.
And like, it is okay to not die on the hill that your children are everything to
Right.
you or your child,
Mhm.
and that that your purpose in life is to be a mom, and that's
Right.
it.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's just a lot of fear around if you do want multiples that they have to be close in age and that they have to be a certain way, or I don't know. If we decide to have another one, I'm not saying we're totally done, but I'm also not saying that we're not. And I think that that's okay too, to like leave it open-ended just based on like, we'll decide when we decide. Right. And if we had a kid, and they'd probably be 5 years apart, and that's fine because that's the decision that we're making for our family.
Yes.
And just being like really confident in that. And, you know, doing a lot of research on what it would look like to have just one child. It's interesting the things you find. A lot of it is systemic, right? When people ask you, for example, it's never, are you going to start a family? It's, are you guys going to have kids?
Yeah.
Multiple.
Yeah.
Even little questions like that. And I think that I struggled with that for so long, just to get out of this sort of vision that I had.
Yeah.
It's okay to change, and it's okay to switch paths. And it's crazy how motherhood will just make you hit complete rock bottom and figure it out from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for it. I really am.
Yeah.
I think it's done
a number.
a number on me.
I'm sweating.
Same.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
So important though. Is there a part of you too, along with that like idea of it being a given that you have multiple kids? Has there been a concern or a stress or worry that you're going to damage Nora somehow?
There has been in the past, but based on, like I said, I'm the type of person, like once I have one idea in my head, I'll just go down a rabbit hole and read every book and research every influencer and podcast I can. So if you need tips, let me know. But yeah, definitely. Like she needs a sibling relationship, and she's going to be a spoiled brat, or all these things. And then just the more I've come to research it, like some of the most successful people are single children. Some of the smartest, most well-liked research has shown that they are only children because they don't have their siblings to sort of lean on. They're forced to get out of their comfort zone, make these strong relationships with friends. They don't have siblings that are either trailing behind them or that they're looking up to follow a certain path, so they can really choose who they are and who they want to be. And they have two parents who are putting all of the time and love and attention, and it can be a really beautiful way to raise a family. And I think it's quality over quantity. If we decide to have another one, great. And if we decide to have just one, I'm also totally happy with that, and just gonna roll with it.
Yeah.
I
don't know how we pulled this off, but it's a Wednesday night here as we record. Between us, there's 3 children that are accounted for somewhere, not within our possession currently. And we're going to go out to dinner.
Sounds great.
So thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you so much for everything you're doing for moms. And you are so inspiring. And I admire you in a million ways that I can't properly express verbally. But you are an angel.
feeling is so mutual. And in the spirit of identity, will you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your career and how people can find you if they're in the market for real estate?
Yeah. So I am a newly licensed 6 months ago real estate agent, but I've been in the real estate industry for 6 years, working more on the escrow side. And now I've just fallen so in love with South Orange County, where I live, that I want to bring as many amazing people to houses that they want to live and grow and love down here in this beautiful place that we call home. And so if you are in the market for a home, list or buy, let me know and I can help you.
Yeah. All right. So I'll link your website.
And my Instagram is at Rachel Bogy. That's Bogy.
All right.
Looks like bogey.
It was bogey in my head for the longest time.
Okay.
All right.
Love
you.
Love you.
Thanks so much for tuning in with us today. If you enjoyed this episode and feel like it brought you value, don't forget to rate the show and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us know which conversations you're needing the most. And we'll keep bringing you new episodes every week, so hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Also, be sure to check out the show notes for any links or resources that we mentioned. We're on this journey with you, so be sure to find us on the gram and TikTok. Plus, go to bloomafterbaby.com and grab our free guides on all things motherhood created just for you.
Breathe, be well, and keep growing, mama.